Hello, everyone, and welcome to another NintendoFuse Game Chat. Today, we're talking all about Tap Wizard 2 for the Nintendo Switch. So, Tap Wizard 2 is a rather unique indie RPG. It takes inspiration from games like Vampire Survivors and Scarlet Towers in the sense that you have waves of enemies coming at you, and you're trying to survive, and your attacks will auto attack. But this game kind of changes it up a bit. Instead of a large map to explore, you're kind of confined into one small area, and the game will play itself for you. Like the game characters will auto move for you and auto dodge, and there's chests. And this is not one of those games that you're like, I'm going to sit down and beat it in a day. Like, oh no, this game is definitely designed for you to play over a long period of time. And in fact, actually gives you achievements and perks while you're offline, while the game is actually closed. Certain things will still count, just not as fast as if you're actually playing. So what you get to do is you first get to pick one of four wizards to start with, and it does increase more. Each has multiple different magical spells of different elements, and as you start to level, you start with one spell, then you get a second, then a third, and after a certain period of time, your character can no longer level. You've hit a cap, and you have to reset. Start all over from scratch. But this time, you get a fourth spell. This time, you could put multiples of each of the spells, and you're going to find yourself awakening multiple times, and every time, new things unlock. So it gets a little bit easier every single time. And of course, this all culminates to eventually you get to fight an era boss, and you get to actually transcend the era, the time era, and you get to move to a new era where new things unlock, new achievements. Each era has their own achievements. I believe there's six, and these are not something you're going to get to in a day. Like these are definitely going to take you time. So this is a very unique spin. I know we just recently did Vampire Survivors, so I want to toss this over to you, Steve. Well, what's your take on your experience with Tap Wizard 2?
I went into this thinking that I was going to also enjoy it, but I was really confused by this game. I started off in Vampire Survivors, and I was like, okay, yeah, like it's a little bit to kind of wrap my head around and try to figure out. But this was even more confusing. I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. I played for about 30 minutes and I still had no idea what I was doing. I had the general idea was I need to kill the things on the screen. But other than that, I was like, I don't know what these things are doing. I don't know how to control them. If I can control them, I can't really control them. It's doing its own thing. I was told at the very beginning of the game that you can change your character, and if you pick a character, you can choose it, you can change it later. But I have no idea how to get back to the main menu to actually do that.
You have to awaken.
Yeah, so you have to keep playing to a certain point. It didn't say that. It's like you can change this later, but nope. Like apparently you have to get to a certain point, then you can change it later, which was so that was confusing. I didn't like how the character kind of moves on its own. It was like sporadic. I was like, I could kind of control where it was going, but it was basically just moving all on its own and everything. So that was weird. I wanted more control over that. Even when I try to take control, because you can leave it alone and it just kind of goes all over the place. But if you try to control it, then it like somewhat moves in that area in kind of a floaty kind of path that like somewhat goes in the direction you were trying to make. I was trying to make it. Yeah, I found out later that I can move, but again, it's not really precise as much as I would want it to be. I would have preferred to have some touchscreen controls as well because I played it on handheld, and that would have been nice to be able to like touch all these different things because the left stick that's used to control the arrow sucks. It is just horrible. It's super slow. It's not incredibly precise. And sometimes the cursor just disappears on you. Like I have no idea. I was like moving and then it just goes away. So it was not a good experience overall for me.
Yeah, I pretty much echo a lot of that. It was mostly kind of confusing because, like, I was expecting to try to play the game, but then the game was just kind of playing itself. And then when I was trying to, like, well, there's a chest there, go get it. And then I was trying to move, and he wasn't like moving towards it. And I was like, well, why wouldn't you go grab a chest? You can go get it. And then, like, I kind of just gave up on the manual controls because I was like, well, it's just going to do whatever it wants. It's not going to let me go where I want to go. So I ended up just letting it just do the auto battle. Like it just continues to just the game just plays itself, and then it would occasionally tell me to click on these various menus to upgrades and add things. And like I did get to a point, but I didn't even reach the awakening point. So I have no idea how many hours is expected to reach there. But I mean, I was already at like wave like 20 something, and like after a few hours of play, and then I still haven't even reached an awakening point. So I have no idea how far away that is, or you have to get to like a wave 100, and then even at the wave 20 or whatever, then there's like sub waves, and it's like, oh, part A and like part B, and then now you're on like wave 21, and then it's like, well, I already technically would have done 21. Like, why is it in 2 second portion, like two separate portions? And like that part was kind of unusual. And then even I do agree with like the mouse cursor stuff. Like I was trying to select a spell, and then I'm like, I thought I was pretty much permanently locked into the spell. I didn't realize you actually had to click and drag the thing, which makes sense for a computer control, not necessarily on a console. Like you would think, like I select this, okay, go over to where my spells are, and then like, oh, I can replace this one with one of my other 5 spells that I have available. Because like I had unlocked like 6 of them, but I can only use like 3 of them up to that point because you need to awaken to get the fourth one. So I almost like I played the bulk of it under the understanding I thought I couldn't even change my spells after they were unlocked because I couldn't. It took that long to figure out that you could actually drag and drop the spells over, and that wasn't very intuitive for like at least a Switch controller. Obviously, for potentially mobile or even like PC, it would make more sense, but I didn't really seem to grab that for like Nintendo Switch. But yeah, there's not really much of a story from what I can tell. You're just taking on waves of stuff, and then the map is basically the same thing for all like 20 waves. There's no like different designs or different locations. It's just like the same forest setting over and over and over again. Um, and even like playing with the offline thing, it doesn't even tell you that the game should be fully closed. And it took like Barry telling us that you actually have to fully close the game for it to do. Because normally I just leave it in sleep mode just to continue, make it easier to continue the next time. But then like nothing even really had happened at that point. So um, I understand like I had like a leveling thing like open and it couldn't like auto select it. But that's, I mean, if you're gonna be playing offline, then I don't understand why the sleep mode portion doesn't also do that or like auto select it. But um, yeah, I guess if you're gonna do an autoplay, I would recommend that the sleep mode actually does that. This functions the same, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, the sleep mode thing definitely would work. So I started off the game just like you guys. I was a little confused. I definitely first thing I did was I tried to use the left analog stick to move, and I was like, "Oh, that's a cursor." Then I realized the right analog stick moves. Okay, fine, get used to that. Then there's a lot that the game doesn't tell you, and it's a lot of figuring this out. Like if you push the A button without touching anything, your character will actually move to the center and stay there, and now you can move it around without it auto playing. So you could
Oh.
actually play without it constantly auto playing, or you can make it auto play.
I noticed randomly what I thought was randomly that he sometimes moved to the middle and didn't move, and I had no idea why. That explains
You,
it.
you probably pressed A without realizing it on something, or backed out of a menu and it translated it as you just pushed A on the screen or
Yeah.
whatever. That's why. And then you can move around, do whatever you want without it auto playing. So you do get the option. This is a game that was definitely designed for the computer first. It was designed for I'm going to keep this on in the background while I do my work and go back to it and upgrade some things and then go back because I see a lot of people because as you do awakenings you unlock a bunch of new stuff and I've seen people in era 6 and like on their 20th 30th awakening in era 6 and I'm like wow like these guys are just playing there's weekly leaderboards there's trials during all the weekends to get items um as you unlock as you play more you actually unlock special scenarios to select. First, you unlock traits. You unlock special traits. There's a skill tree that will unlock for you, and you can unlock permanent upgrades through the skill tree and unlock traits that way. There's special scenarios where it's like there's 75% less enemies, but the enemies have 400% more HP, and if you wind up doing that and beating that like to the point of awakening, you get a permanent like 5% damage increase and more of the currency needed to move eras. So the game there's a lot to it, and I started playing. I probably put like 70 something hours into this, with a lot of it being playing in the background, where I was like playing on the PlayStation or watching a movie and just letting it play in the background on the Switch. And I wound up unlocking. I wound up moving eras. I wound up getting to era 2. Era 2 has new backgrounds. There was like a desert. There was like an ice filled forest. So and that I encountered the biggest glitch, I think, in era 2, and I don't know if the devs. Well, there's two glitches I encountered. One is you get a spyglass, and if you use the spyglass and try to use the spyglass, it crashes my game. Gives me an error, crashes the game every time. The spyglass is used. I only found a use for it when the era boss appears, and the era boss appears, and it's a massive thing, and it has like 3 different phases. But you don't need to use the spyglass; it just tells you in the spyglass menu. But whenever tried to use the spyglass, it gave me an error. But then there's upgrades. So there's different research. You could do different research. You could upgrade your max attack. You could upgrade your max health. The amount of souls enemies give you, the amount of experience you get, and the amount of time it takes to enchant, or the less needed to enchant. And every time you enchant, I don't know if you guys ever did enchanting, but if you enchant, you lose your power for a bit and slowly get it back at the cost of a permanent power boost and a cheaper research cost for all the things. So it becomes this play bound. Oh, and you also start at wave 1 again. You have to work your way back up. All the bosses are dead anyway, so it's very easy. It just takes time to work back up. But as you're leveling up, this is really cool. And I started being strategic. I'm like, oh, wait, I'm going to go a couple more times and I'm going to research down and go back, or enchant back down to world 1, or wave 1, and use that cheaper research and start getting all my stuff up. Well, come era 2, it gives you this thing that will auto do it for you and auto fund it for you if you have enough currency, which is great if you want to play even less casually. But if I want to disable that, it's still activated. So I could no longer use my strategy. So the second I had enough currency to fund something, it instantly funded it for me, even if I didn't want to. And that was annoying. That eventually turned off, and I don't know why randomly it just stopped working that way. So I was able to play normally. When I awakened again, it was back doing it. And I'm like, oh, this is frustrating. So it's a weird glitch. I don't know if it's only in era 2 and it happens and it stops in era 3 onwards. I didn't get that far. To jump eras, you need a special currency that takes a long time. It's like 20 days offline or like 5 days online or something stupid, to get, just to jump eras. Like, the game is not meant for you to beat in a day. It is definitely a longer, like I said, it's meant for you to play at work, put in the background, and have something that you just have to click a few things and enjoy. But they wound up moving it to Switch. Overall, I think it plays well on Switch, but because of that need to be online and you can't play another Switch game in the background, like if you could play this, leave this on the background, play another Switch game, I think it'd be great. But because you can't, um, that kind of hurts it a little bit. So I know you guys didn't get as far as I did.
Not even close.
Not even close. There's also totems. I didn't even talk about totems. You can get totems. There's like a gnome every 12 or so hours. The gnome will find like a wooden totem, and you can rub it, and you get random totems that will appear. And like there's a Komodo dragon, and there's a fox, and they all do different things when they appear on the map. There's also a shop with things you could buy, like rings that give permanent upgrades. There's a lot to this game, and it's unfortunate that there's a lot that they don't tell you in the beginning, and they kind of leave you to figure out. Once you figure it out, I think there's a great game there. But again, the thing that sucks is you can't. It's meant to be run in the background, and you really can't do that on Switch. So obviously, your experience is a little bit more limited. I got to ask you though, guys, it's $14.99 digitally. Steve, what are your thoughts?
I this is definitely a niche game. I think if you like, and I think it's cool that we had different experiences with this, because you're hearing from, that's one of the beauties of game chats, is that we have different experiences, different perspectives. And so if you heard what Barry said and like that sounds really cool and that'd be great to have on my Switch, then awesome. But from my perspective, I can't recommend it. I'm not a big fan of this. I think the concept is really cool. I think, and like you said, if you write in on your computer I think it might be better. But also there's too many things that are hindering me from even if I liked what you said, Barry, and like, oh man, that sounds cool. I'll give it another shot. The issues with the controls and the issues with like not being very clear what you're doing and the cursor disappearing, all those different things are too much of a hindrance for me to say, okay, I want to give this another shot because I just had a bad experience playing it overall. And just in general, like developers are watching this, for a game called Tap Wizard, would you please enable tap on the Nintendo Switch touchscreen, please? That'd be awesome because I think a lot of those issues would be alleviated if I could touch the screen and move around, especially when you're porting a PC game over to Nintendo Switch. You've got a touch screen, utilize it. It's going to be so much better of an experience overall. So I can't recommend it from my perspective.
Yeah, and I kind of echo that because I mean, I usually like to enjoy actually playing the games, and this one seems like it had more fun playing the game itself. So I understand like it's great to build up and not have to focus on things, but like when I think about trying to play an actual game, I usually appreciate being able to control the character like pretty much in full and almost like nearly the whole time, and be able to do strategies that way. But it seems like it doesn't really explain how you can use the different movements or even how to disable like the auto battle controls, and then even like the auto ones seem to do really well to begin with, so I don't know if I'd want to take the time to even try to learn that because it pretty much navigates around the map pretty efficiently once you're more powered up and it can just knock out the waves of enemies. But um I mean, from that perspective, I mean, I would still recommend it for those that do like these kinds of like kind of grindy type games where you pretty much don't have to necessarily do any actual playing. But I understand from my personal experience, that's I like to actually try to play the game itself. So it's not my taste, and that's where my main thing would be to not recommend it.
So this one's a tough one. I had a lot of fun with it. I'm not gonna lie. There was definitely like a charm
Well, you put
of
70
the
hours in
grind.
it. I would assume you did.
Well, I had it open for 70 hours. I wasn't necessarily playing it
Sure.
for a lot of that time. Because again, this is one of those games that like I literally would be like, I have work to do downstairs. I'm just gonna leave it on upstairs and come down and do like a couple hours worth of work and then go upstairs and be like, oh, what benefits did I get? Um, so if you enjoy a grindy game, and I definitely will have to say I would recommend the PC version over the Switch version, just because you can have it on in the background, you can do other things in the PC, and even if you wanted to leave it running overnight, I think that's easier to do than the Switch because the Switch you have to have the controller on the whole time, or you have to have it like plugged up and handheld to run it overnight. This is definitely one of those idle games. Play for a little bit, then leave it idle. I think there's a lot to it, and I think there's a small but dedicated community based on like the amount of people I saw doing the trials and the leaderboards and stuff, and they were active. So there's definitely a community playing this game. Uh, I think it's a little high on the price for the Switch version, but I would recommend it on a sale if you have to get the Switch version. There's not like I really wish they give you a little bit more in the beginning because I think that if you got over that little bit of a hurdle, like the lack of knowledge hurdle, you especially through the first awakening, because then it opens up even more when you could do double spells and and you have four spells available to you at one all at once right from the get go. And you more things start to unlock and it just becomes easier because the way you awaken is there's a spell, the rod, and the rod upgrades after so much time, and then you get to choose a perk for your spells. And when that rod hits the limit, which I think is like level 10 to start with, 10 or 11 or something like that, then you have to awaken. You can't get it higher. And then the next time it goes to 12, and then 13, 14, 15, so etc. So each wave you go a little bit farther and farther. So I do think there's a good game here if this is your cup of tea. So that being said, we do want to thank um, the publishers Ultimate Games for providing us review codes. This was developed by Top Cog and it came out January 30th of 2025, so just recently. And we do actually have a couple codes to give away for this. So make sure to stay tuned to our social media for information on how to get that, as well as our podcast for information about the winners. So, Steve, Greg, thank you so much for joining me today. And if you like this and other reviews like this, please subscribe to NintendoFuse. Go to nintendofuse.com. We have our podcast, we have industry talks, we've got a bunch of other content. So hopefully we see you there. Thank you so much and have yourself a great day.